Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. It's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the Wednesday video where I answer your questions. Each week, people ask me some pretty cool questions, and the following week, I answer those questions. So if you have a question you want answered, put it in the comments below, and I will answer it next week. This week, got some pretty cool questions. Some ones I have to show some cool books for, and let's get right into it with a Drift's question. He wrote, do you have any early comic fanzines in your collection? I actually do, but not too many, I should say. But I wanted to show you something, like rather than digging out a lot of the ones are related to monsters. So I have a bunch of like scary monsters and stuff like that. They're not that early. So I wanted to show you something that kind of is early and is cool for odd reasons. Okay, it's this one. This is the World of Fanzines, and if you look at the bottom here, you can see who wrote it. Frederick Wortham, MD. That's the same Frederick Wortham that wrote The Seduction of the Innocent, and he wrote this book, which was basically saying about his love of fanzines. He was very open about promoting, that he liked fanzines and thought that they were good for the hobby. And, so he wrote a book about it. Actually, this is my signed copy of the book. This book was so popular, actually, that he was invited to a comic con where he was booed off stage. So, but he did get invited to speak, and it didn't go so well. But he actually was against censorship. That's the funny thing. He just wanted age restrictions on comics. He didn't want to go full censorship. But he caused the very end of the comic golden age era. So, but I thought that was a cool fanzine to show you. The next question you asked was, do you have any golden age comic paraphernalia in your collection? Pins, toys, cards, etc. Like, I'll show you a few things that I have. They're not, like, they're more on the book related side, I guess. Like, I have like this little, like one of these like things that would probably be in like either I believe it's from like bread or something like that, where you get like one of these little compasses. These are Popeye compasses. It's an early Popeye. It's probably like one of the first appearances of Popeye. Not the first appearance, but one of the earliest appearances of Popeye. It came out maybe a year after his first appearance. So early appearance of Popeye. And it's like a little booklet. And then I have a whole bunch of these little better little books. This is one that's dedicated to Mickey Mouse. I have a whole bunch of those. And then I have another Popeye one. This is a different style of those, flip books that kids would read. So yeah. I also got this gift from Steven. I will show it to you. I'm not sure if you can see it. Wait a sec. Let's see if I can make it reflect properly. And this is Junior Justice Society of America. Now, what happened was they would make these like little pins that they would have, and somebody found the original pin press thing, and they made this one out of bronze. So this is from the original, I think this is bronze or brass or something like that. Or copper maybe, I don't know. I think it's bronze, but I'm not sure. Name that material. So this is kind of like a pin from the Golden Age, kind of. Okay, so that was a gift from Steven. He gave me that. I guess they didn't make too many of those, but something cool. I actually have some original art from the Golden Age coming in my next no, it's coming in a while. It's going to be a while because I'm making payments on it mixed in with another collection. So, but I will be getting some original art from the Golden Age. So that's going to be cool. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't really have that much. Sorry. Mark Webb wrote, if I remember correctly, on one of your Sunday videos, you talked about a sale for a comic where the contents didn't exactly match the cover. Could you elaborate on the title more and provide other examples like it? Well, the one that I was talking about was Blazing Combat. I keep on saying Blazing Combat because that's another title, but Blazing Comics number 4. And even when I was doing the video, I kept on saying Blazing Combat. It's the weirdest thing, but it's Blazing Comics number 4. And that one could have the interior for the first appearance of the Red Hood, or could have some other key appearances in it where they basically took remainder copies from DC and other publishers like Fawcett and so forth, and then they would slab them all, put them all together, put a cover on it, and that would be a comic that they would release. And so if you're lucky, you might get the remainder copies of like some other comic. It was very common that back in the day they would, not sell everything that would hit the newsstands, and they would rip off the tops and send them in. Well, I guess several of the publishers, would buy those or take those remainder copies and then kind of repackage them and send them out as a new comic. Now, the ones that I can think of that did that a lot were like Fox Features Syndicate. They would take their own remainder copies and put a new cover on them and send them out again. Now, the only problem with that is if you read any of the originals, because they would have to remove the original cover. Well, the original cover would have page 1 of the story, and then the page 2 would be the first interior page. Well, because they removed that cover, all the remainder copies that they would send out in this bound volumes, or not bound volumes, but in like a thicker comic, would be missing the first page of every story. It's like kind of an annoying thing, but that's something that they did. Another one that I have, and this is actually collectible, another cool one, is another series that did that was Red Circle. And this was from, which company is it? Rural Home. And this one is kind of a key because it features the original story. So there might be different stories inside depending on which version you get. Well, I picked up the version with the Dorothy Lamour story inside. Now, it's the first appearance of Dorothy Lamour that was reprinted. Not reprinted, it wasn't even reprinted. It was like the remainder copy that was stuck into this. So so this is like kind of a key first appearance of Dorothy Lamour. And it's like her remainder copy, which is inside this one. And yeah, it actually has a pretty cool cover anyways. So that's an example of what they were doing. I don't know why they did that. I think they were just being like, trying to make, money where they could. And it was just a waste for all these remainder copies. So they figured, hey, let's recycle them in some way. So that's what they were doing. Okay. Enrique Maldonado. Totally messing up his name. Oh, okay, sorry, Enrique. Enrique. I'll just say Enrique. I'm terrible at pronouncing people's names, and forgive me. He wrote, do you have any Charlie Brown or Peanuts comics books? Yes, I do. I'm a big Peanuts fan. I was really into Snoopy as a kid. And I'm going to show you kind of the first, all the major keys for Snoopy. So we're going to start out with this book. This is Tip Top 173. Now, obviously, This is not Snoopy or Charlie Brown. This is Sluggo and Nancy. But this is actually the first appearance of Snoopy and the Peanuts in comics. So this is Tip Top Comics 173. And a book that came out almost at the same time is this one, Fritzy Ritz, this is United Comics number 21. And this came out like a week later. And so this is the second appearance of the Peanuts. And then Tip Topper, number 16. Tip Topper number 16 is where the Peanuts made their third appearance, but still not on the cover. And then this book is tied with another book, which is Peanuts, just Peanuts title, for having the first cover appearance of Charlie Brown, Snoopy, and Lucy. I think this is really cool. I like the kind of the style of the Peanuts. I think it's really cool. So this is the first cover appearance of the Peanuts. So those are all the major keys. Not all of them, actually. Pretty much all the early Peanuts covers go for thousands of dollars. It's crazy. And I have a few of them, but those are the ones I could find easily. Next question comes from K. Munin. In a recent video, you stated that it is now the best time to be a comic collector. How do you think the past era of comic collecting hold up to now, or where do they fall short? Many thanks, as always, for your insight. Okay, so the reason I was kind of saying that now is the best time to be a collector is just because of access. Mainly, the main kind of reason is all the books, every year you're getting more and more books, so there's more and more stuff to collect. Well, this is the pinnacle of all the stuff to collect, right? Because it's all there. The other thing is we have the internet now. We have like just so many sites where you can buy comics. You got Whatnot, you got Hip Comics, you got eBay, you got My Comic Shop, you got Heritage Auctions. You have like a dozen places to buy pretty much anything you can imagine. Pretty good, easy access to information as well. You have Go Collect, you have GPA analysis, you have past sales on eBay. There's so much data that we can get to know how much comics are worth and which comics are the ones to go for, like key collector comics and so forth. So right now, access to information and access to comics make it the best time. So with that in mind, we go back and we look at the previous generation. So the Golden Age, well, if you're in that era, well, the reason you're falling short is not because you're not getting access to cool books. There was a lot of stuff that came out back then. And you're getting it for 10 cents each, which would have been awesome. So that's the cool part of it, but you didn't get all the new stuff, like the stuff that we see as old stuff, right? If you're living in the Golden Age, well, you didn't see the Silver Age, you didn't see the Bronze Age, you didn't see all those other ages. So, that era, at that time, you're limited to what's in the Golden Age, which is a lot, actually. And you're getting it when you can get it in high grade off the shelf, which is awesome. But you don't have the knowledge that we have. We have that, hindsight. It's like to say, oh, this is the book to buy. I see so many collections where people get like hand-me-down collections from their grandparents. And at the time, they thought Westerns were the thing. Like you see all these collections, they have a massive amount of Westerns. Well, Westerns don't really sell for that much nowadays. Or you see a lot of collections with a lot of funny animals. Well, those are also inexpensive. That could change. But my point is, sometimes you buy the wrong books when you're in that era. Like I remember in the 90s, I was buying the wrong stuff. Like I just was buying the wrong stuff. I bought some good stuff, but I bought some of the wrong stuff. But so that's kind of the problem with that era. Silver Age, you know, you have access to the Golden Age, you have access to stuff, but still access to knowledge. It was very limited up till the 90s, really, up till when the photo journal came out, where people were starting to realize, hey, there's all this stuff that's there. So really that was the problem with the Silver Age, where you just didn't know. The problem with the Bronze Age, in terms of collecting, was a lot of stuff was getting massively produced, and there was just so much, and it was a very derivative stuff for the most part compared to the Silver Age. Silver Age, even though it marked a new era in terms of going from like pretty much the Wild West of comics of the Golden Age to an era where it's very code restricted and so forth, it actually forced writers to be more creative and better storytellers in some ways, where they were actually more advanced in terms of the way that they were creating stories. The Bronze Age kind of repurposed a lot of that stories, and they were introducing different stuff, like I think of horror and stuff was kind of making its way back in, and they were trying to do, which I think is lazy writing, like these things where the drug issues and stuff like that. You know, they were trying to tackle more societal stuff. I'm not a big fan of that personally, but that was kind of like the big thing in the Bronze Age. I see stories as escapism rather than trying to deal with what's going on in our world right now. So that Bronze Age was kind of marked by that, and we're kind of going through that again now. But again, still, the Bronze Age, one of the benefits of it, though, was it was the time that the Overstreet Guide came out. And before that, in the Silver Age, you had maybe at the back of some of the comics, they would have people that would say, you know, we were buying comics, and they would kind of have price lists. But that was pretty much the only way people would have a sense of how much books were worth. It wasn't as clearly defined as the time that the Overstreet Guide came out. So once the Overstreet Guide came out, things got a little better defined. Once the photo journal came out in the 80s, it got even more defined, where people said, well, this book is better than this other book, even though they were clumped together in the Overstreet Guide. So those were kind of the weaknesses of those eras. The 90s, that era was a bit of a mess. You know, it was like overinflation of the comics. Like, comics were really expensive back in the 90s. They might not seem it now compared to what we pay for some books now, but they were actually pretty pricey. I remember, you know, always like the wall books, right? And the wall books were like modern 90s stuff that were massively printed, but still going for $20-$30. And there was a lot of hype in the 90s, and still there was a lot of gatekeeping in terms of people. You didn't see the Golden Age books. You didn't really get access to that kind of Golden Age stuff. Like, there were people kind of hoarding that stuff or hiding it away, and I really found that annoying about the 90s in a way. So getting access to modern books was pretty easy, but access to the older stuff wasn't something that we could really do. But there was access to comic shops. There was so many comic shops. Yeah, that was great about the 90s. Actually, in some ways, that element of the 90s was probably the best era of all, because just the sheer number of comic shops in the 90s, like, there's no other era that kind of can compete with that. The only thing in the Golden Age is you had a lot of newsstands that would have comics, and they were all over the place, but they weren't like the 90s. Kind of brought in the concept not only of back issues, but just of the idea that anyone could start a comic shop and start selling new issues with back issues, and that really changed comic collecting. So 90s were kind of the big time for that, and we don't really get that as much now. But the difference is now we have the massive warehouses where you don't need a shop anymore. You just have this massive warehouse of books, and you put it into a digital format where it's online, either through eBay or through your own website. So a different kind of way of looking at things. But yeah, so those are ways that they kind of were good, but also fell short. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, and now we're in the modern era where, as I said, we have access to everything. Okay. The only thing that I would say, one weakness about now, just quickly, is the price. One, but also some books just didn't survive. Like you just can't find them in a high grade. So if you were alive in the golden age, maybe that would have been a good time to be able to pick up some really high grade copy of some rather cool book that now is almost impossible to find in any grade. Okay, that's the last point that I'll make on that. Next question comes from Eric Casagrande. Adventure Comics first started in New Fun Comics, the big comic magazine. Then they changed its name to New Fun Comics, and then once again to New Adventure Comics, before settling on Adventure Comics, which was its banner name until for the next 45 years or so. Do you have any of those earlier comics in your collection that were predecessor comics as noted above to Adventure Comics? No. Sorry, I don't. And they actually go for a lot. I actually bid on a few of them, like a few of those more New Fun comics, but they go for crazy prices. They even like they're not super like cool covers or anything like that, but they're just they're books that have so much history related to them, even though they are most time they were just reprints of the news strips. But they go for crazy money. I have not had a chance to add any of those to my collection. But I did bring one kind of similar idea. And this is Amazing Adventures. The reason I show this one is this became Amazing Adult Fantasy, and then it became Amazing Fantasy, and that led to Spider-Man. So this is kind of like one of those precursor books. So yeah, but that's the only one I could think of. Actually, I didn't realize my case is cracked. I just noticed that. I'm not sure if you can see. It's cracked right there. Or scratched. I'm not sure if it's cracked or scratched. It looks like, it feels more like a scratch, actually. That's kind of sad. Oh well. So this is why you gotta be careful with your slabs. That one's got definitely a scratch in it. I never noticed that until now. That's kind of sad. But that's the only precursor comic that I can think of. I know it's Marvel instead of DC. Sorry, I don't have the other ones. Okay, Troy Evans wrote, within the next decade, boomers will start passing away. I think, Troy, I think you've mentioned this before, that you're trying to kill off basically the boomers. I noticed this. It's like all the boomers you're trying to kill off here. Okay, but just saying. There'll be some estate sales with a lot of long-term held Golden Age comics coming to market. The two main generations that will be buying will be Generation X and Millennials. I'm Generation X, so that's a good thing. What do you think will happen to the fair market value of these Golden Age grails as the market is flooded with books that rarely sell to the remaining two generations that grew up with the books? Okay, so here's what's going to happen. There's going to be the Generation X, probably more so than Millennials, is the stronger collector generation, because we're the generation that we were in our 20s during the 90s, and that was the peak of the comic market. And a lot of the collectors kind of got out of the hobby. A lot of the Generation X collectors got out of the hobby. And when I actually did my interview series, I was speaking to a lot of Gen X people like myself, And they would say, oh, I got back into the hobby around 2015. Like they, left the hobby but came back into the hobby around 2015. They sort of sorted out their lives, like in terms of had the family, had the house, had all that kind of stuff. And kids were now older, so they could get back into the hobby. The movies were popular. So 2015 was kind of like that era that brought people back into the hobby. So with that being said, if these Gen Xers now, their parents are passing away, they're a little bit older, so their parents are older, right? So their parents are now passing away. If they had collections themselves, well, that could bring in new Gen Xers into the collecting hobby that maybe were nostalgic to the 90s, because the 90s, there was a lot of collectors back in the 90s. It was actually cool to be a comic collector to a certain extent. It was really big back in the 90s. So I think there's a lot of Gen Xers that have that nostalgia, and they could be easily swayed to come back into the hobby. So I actually think there'll be a bit of a boom, not to not to kill off the boomers too much, but there will be a bit of a boom, because what'll happen is you'll have the flood of comics, and you'll have a slightly older Gen X generation that'll have, once you get a little bit older, once you get into your 50s, you have a lot more disposable income to play with, where you can kind of buy a few things, and you don't have the dependence as much. Your kids are maybe moved out, you're empty nester, and you can afford to buy some stuff for yourself. So I see that flood of books coming to the market being very quickly absorbed by Gen X. Now, the millennials might not appreciate the comics as much as the Gen Xers, but I do think they are willing. A lot of them will either just sell the collections, but a lot of them might, like, I think of some of the younger collectors that I've met, where they see it as like, not necessarily the nostalgic way, but they see it as something that has value and they're curious about. And they are collectors. They're the collector. I believe there's a collector gene, and so it's independent of any generation. Like we all have it. How well it's been fostered through like experience is a question, but I feel like it could be triggered by like in an inheritance, where people all of a sudden get this cool collection of books. Some people will just sell them, but the ones with the collector gene, which I do believe is out there, will say, hey, these are cool, and oh, are they valuable? And and they'll look into it. It's not like our grandfather's generation, where people didn't know comics were valuable. Like everybody now knows that there's comics that are valuable. It's not like it's common knowledge that comics are valuable. So what'll end up happening is anyone that picks up a collection of comics nowadays, even if it's junk, will think, oh, it must be valuable, and they'll do some research. And that's where collectors can be born, because they just like, oh wow, this book has value, and they start realizing that the hobby is maybe cooler than they they would have thought. So I do believe that that'll happen, where there'll be this sort of passing of the torch to a new generation, either the Gen Xers or the millennials. And also the millennials, they were the ones, like the 90s kids, we had the 90s boom in the comics, but the millennials had the boom of the MCU. And so, anything that is comic related might actually have a bit of that nostalgia kind of to them as well. So they might really relate to the coolness of some of these books that have their characters that they knew and grew up with through watching the movies. So you never know. I don't think we're gonna have to worry about the market tanking and all of a sudden they're going to be worthless just because there's a new influx of books hitting the market, and there's a loss of those older collectors. So that would be my guess. Okay, next question. comes from Matt Likes Comics. DC and All American had a lot of success in the early days with their anthology titles. Which one do you think had the best lineup of characters and heroes and features? The one I'm going to go with, I really do like All American. All American had All Star Comics, and I really do like All Star Comics. All Star Comics had Wonder Woman, so that's a hard one not to say, well, All Star Comics, but I'm actually going to pick More Fun Comics as an anthology one to pick up that I think is cool. This is More Fun Comics 101. It's the first appearance of Superboy. The cool thing about More Fun Comics is you get like characters like Dr. Fate, Spectre. And I think those are kind of really cool characters. You also get Aquaman, you get Green Arrow and Speedy, you get Superboy, you get Mud and Jeff, which is annoying, and Dobby and whatever, like some of those like annoying characters. But you do get a good line of other characters that really do make the stories great. So I'm a big fan of the Spectre. So I would go with More Fun. Though I do like All Star. That'd be the other kind of one that I would like be debating about, because I really do like the villains in All Star Comics, and I do like obviously the heroes as well. Both are great though. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. Charles Day wrote, I have a Smiling Jack from 1936 for G.R. Keeney shoes in comic book format. The paper is more like cotton cloth. Spent 7 years trying to find info. Nothing. Can you help me out? So G.R. Keeney Company was actually owned by Woolworth. I think it was at one point. That was the head company, but it was originally started as an American manufacturer retailer of shoes in 1894. Okay, and it lasted until September 16th, 1998. Okay, so it had a pretty good run, almost 104 years, so not a bad run. Now, those promo comics, they can be quite rare. The problem is you got a Smiling Jack. Smiling Jack, even his comic book appearances aren't particularly valuable. Some of those promo comics just don't go for that much, which is sad. Typically, the Keeney ones, the Keeney shoe ones, go for anywhere from $20 to $50 kind of range. If you have a high grade copy, it might go for a bit more, but just there's not really that much value, just because Smiling Jack is one of those characters that people don't really like or know. I'm sorry, it's an early one, which is cool, but that's all I can say. There's really not much information about the value of your particular promo comic. It's one of those ones where the interesting thing about it, if you ever try to sell a promo comic, because it is really almost like a one of a kind, you can put it into an auction and you might get $1,000 or you might get $1. It is really that kind of random in a way. It really depends on the buyers if they're interested in it. Now, because it's an early one, maybe they might be interested in it. But it's not. There's no set market, so nobody knows how much to bid or how far to go with it. So I'm sort of doubting that it would get to that 1,000 mark. That's why I was saying that others from that shoe company go for about that $20 to $50 range. I hope that helps. Last question comes from Kenny Numbers. You recently spoke about AI-generated art. It is making it possible for non-artistic people to create comics. I'm in that group. Do you have any great tips or suggestions on how I can market my graphic novels? Okay, so AI-generated art is, I actually have like a downloaded model on my computer where I'm actually able to generate AI art, and I've been playing with it. I tried to produce a bunch of Golden Age characters and stuff like that. Really hard. You got to be really good at the prompting, and it's not consistent. But if you have been lucky enough to get it sort of that you're getting consistent results and able to produce like a graphic novel, that's good. The next step really is finding a format, like a way of getting it published. I recently talked about my experience doing my personal book, like my comic book that I released, which had one AI art in it actually, which I wasn't super happy about, but it did have AI art in it. Generally, what happens is you can do what's called a Kickstarter, and this is probably the best way to promote your comic and give it a great, make your cover as great as possible or have multiple covers. And what you do is you set up a Kickstarter, you explain what your comic book is going to be about, or your graphic novel or whatever it is. And then what you do is you set tiers. So you say, okay, I want to, if you want to just support me and get a digital copy, it is $5, okay? If you want a tangible printed copy, you say it's $20 for cover A. And then you have add-on covers, like where you just make new covers. The AR art makes it easy and makes some sexier ones, and those usually do well. So you have like multiple covers and allow people. Now you'll find you'll get some pushback because it is AI art, and some people generally don't like AI art because there is that stigma of, oh, you're stealing from artists or whatever. So you got to be a little bit careful about that, but or expect a little bit of backlash. But for the most part, if you do what I'm describing, you can have a comic that you can have printed out, and maybe build an audience of fans that might like your stories. The main thing is you have to hook up with a printer who can deliver the comics on time. That was my problem. I didn't find a printer that can deliver on time. They, because we were a new client, they were really slow. Not the best, but they delayed it like 4 or 5 months. Not too happy about that. But my point is, find a good printer and you should be okay. What you should do is also, when you set up a Kickstarter, you always have to set a goal. Usually you want to set a lower goal, because if your Kickstarter gets self-funded in a shorter time, it looks better. So generally you'll get more engagement if you if you hit your goal quickly. So Kickstarter has like some weird algorithm where it will like promote your thing more often if you hit your goal quickly, because it shows that people must have been interested. So a couple things you should do is, when you create a Kickstarter, and I'm recommending creating a Kickstarter as a way to promote your book, is engage with channels like myself, or K-pop is another channel that's really good, and basically say, hey, I'm going to have a launch party. And you basically get people excited about the comic. You tell the story of the comic and get people engaged. And then you have a launch party where on such and such a date you get everyone to buy it all at once. And that makes the algorithm look like, oh, this must be a really hot book because everyone's coming in all at once to buy it. And then you'll find that they'll promote it beyond the number of people that you know. So generally that's kind of the way you market the book. So good luck. I hope it works out for you, and send me some images, or send me a link and I'll take a look at it. Okay, thanks again. Okay, so that is it for this week. Those are the questions. I hope you enjoyed my answers. If you have a question you want answered, put it in the comments below and I will answer it next week. So again, thanks for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye for now.